Winning 4 teams battle for the ultimate prize of representing the country in CAF Confederations Cup. Tusker FC will lock horns with Ulinzi Stars from 12 p.m. while the much-awaited Ingo Derby pitting Kakamega Homeboys and AFC Leopards will kick off at 3 p.m. Catch all the action live on KBC Channel 1 from Nyayo National Stadium. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Ili kupata skiza tune hii ya missed call, bonyeza *811 *961 hash.
Juzi mimi ninakuja, ninatoka nje, ninawacha simu hapo. Nikirudi kutoka raundi napata 4 missed call ya kutoka kwa bibi. Nikimuuliza ulikuwa unapiga unasema nini? Ananiambia eti alikuwa ananipigia, aniambie nimesahau simu. Kumbe bibi ananipenda na mimi.
Ili kupata skiza tune hiyo ya missed call, kama skiza tune yako, bonyeza *811 *961 hash. *811 *961 hash.
Hello from wherever you're watching us in Kenya and around the world. This day that the world is celebrating their boy child, you are in time for Prime Edition. Coming to you live from Broadcast House right here in the capital city. A long hurry through Road. Good evening. My name is Mboya. We begin tonight's live broadcast with a look at a summary of the stories that made it to the headlines. From the Directorate of Public Prosecution to intelligence gathering, Nudi Naji returns to NIS as Director General. Rubbing it in, Azimio leader Raila Odinga continues with Anti-Finance Bill 2023 campaign. The story of Baraza, the water vendor, Vongata Rongai, and his donkey affair on the World Day of the Boy Child. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us. Remember, it's Tuesday, so a little later on in this live broadcast, we will be having The Scorecard, the program that comes to you every week. Mariambo, O'Brien Kimani hosting a fully constituted panel. Tonight's topic of discussion, drug and substance abuse. You don't want to miss that. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Brian Muramo. Our socials at KBC Channel 1 and my Twitter handle at Mboya. So get texting. Our lead story now. The cabinet has approved the raft of reforms that will help Kenya transform. In the reforms, Kenya's power will undergo restructuring aimed at restoring profitability. The water and health sector will also go through a series of changes. The cabinet agreed to ensure prudent utilization of public resources. That report opens our coverage tonight.
President William Ruto has emphasized integrity and vigilance within government ministries and departments. He issued a stern warning against corruption and wastage in the provision of services to the people. He was speaking at the 5th cabinet meeting at State House, Nairobi. Meanwhile, the cabinet has approved a restructuring of Kenya Power's balance sheet aiming to restore profitability. The new plan focuses on enhancing the company's financial sustainability, particularly by addressing loan balances and the liquidity gap. The reforms will include the readjusting of the board to reflect its shareholding. The cabinet has also approved the involvement of the private sector in the development of water infrastructure in the country, as well as the plan to help farmers restock livestock that perished during the prolonged drought seasons and aid recovery. The cabinet further approved a commitment with World Health Organization to make Kenya a regional emergency hub in Nairobi. The cabinet also approved the transformation of the Kenya Meteorological Department into the Kenya Meteorological Services, enabling compliance with international instruments to fulfill its international obligations. For Prime Edition, I am Teresa Mutai.
President William Ruto has today nominated the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, as the new Director General of the National Intelligence Service. Haji will replace retired Major General Philip Wachira Kameru, who is proceeding on retirement. The President also reshuffled 7 principal secretaries and nominated 1 more. Here's that report. Well, let's connect that story, I'm told, with another one, but now in the political space, where Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Amolo Odinga has maintained that the proposals in the Finance Bill 2023 will hurt Kenyans if passed as is. Odinga is calling on government to seek alternative means to improve government income as opposed to imposing tax. Odinga says that if passed, the opposition will be forced to mobilize the public to reject the outcome in line with Article 1 of the Constitution, which gives sovereignty to the people of Kenya. Here's that report now.
Just a day after President William Ruto defended the proposals contained in the Finance Bill 2023, Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga has continued to oppose it, saying that it will worsen the burden on Kenyans. Alluding to the Swahili saying, Punda amechoka, Odinga cautioned the government against introducing further taxes on the already struggling Kenyans.
Wakenya hawawezi kuvumilia tena mzigo zaidi sasa. Tukahimiza serikali tuchukue hatua tofauti. Kuna njia mingi ya kuwapaka.
The opposition leader accused the government of what he termed as the use of funds it does not have.
We make it clear that if this bill is railroaded through Parliament, Kenya Kwanza must prepare that we will have no option but to mobilize citizens around the country to fight for themselves. We will have no option but to mobilize all the social sectors and take all the necessary political actions to stop this blow and burden. Punda imechoka.
The opposition chief is calling on Kenyans to come out in numbers to reject the bill and the proposals therein.
We appeal to all Kenyans to participate actively in the process of validation and express themselves loudly and clearly that they cannot take any more burden.
On the housing levy proposal, Odinga said that Kenyans should be given a choice on what to invest in. Odinga has in the meantime downplayed claims of having held talks with the president following the encounter during the burial of Mukami Kimathi and later during the Kipchoge Keino Classic and the Mashemeji Derby.
We just met there a chance and the pictures were taken. But we did not talk anything other than football. And there was no handshake.
Odinga has termed the encounter as a mere chance, maintaining that Azimio was not in pursuit of a handshake. Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga has maintained that the proposals in the Finance Bill 2023 are a burden to the Kenyan people, calling on the government to consider using alternative means to revive the economy. Nancy Okware, reporting for Prime Edition, Nairobi.
Let's now get an update on Shakahola, where the death toll from that tragedy has now hit 211 on Tuesday, following the exhumation of 10 more bodies. The exhumation exercise by a multi-agency team resumed after a 2-day break.
Development at Milimani Locals. Pastor Ezekiel Odero's legal team sought another avenue to have his bank accounts unfrozen.
We resolved that as a matter of urgency, an application ought to be filed before Honorable Kubi.
The development comes in the wake of Monday's dismissal of an application by the High Court in Mombasa, where Justice Olga Sewe said the court lacks jurisdiction to interfere with the matter pending before a Nairobi court.
We are asking the court to allow Pastor Ezekiel to get partial withdrawal of between 50 million to 100 million shillings to run the church and the school and all the facilities.
The urgent application by Pastor Ezekiel comes a day before Senior Principal Magistrate Ben Makehobe is expected to rule on the matter. The televangelist wants the court to order the opening of bank accounts for New Life Kilifi International School and International University.
Tumeomba mambo matatu. Kwanza, account ya kanisa, ambapo katika ile account ya kanisa wanafunzi katika taifa la Kenya zaidi ya 5,000 ambayo pastor na wasomesha hawajaenda shule.
Separately, controversial preacher Eliud Wekesa Simeo, alias Yesu Tongaren, is off the hook. This is after Bungoma court that had ordered his detention for 4 days freed him for lack of evidence. In a ruling Tuesday, Principal Magistrate Tom Orlando said the prosecution did not provide sufficient evidence before the court to charge the New Jerusalem sect leader.
For sure, where is this country? Yesu Watongareni hana chochote. If there is a problem that has happened with one person who is still very innocent until presumed guilty, kule Mombasa, don't condemn others because of that one person.
Last Friday, the prosecution sought to search his home and complete investigations.
Wale wa kwamba nilienda nao Jumamosi, nikatembea nao kwa nyumba, hata nikashukuru Jumamosi na kuanga ni Sabbath day. Nishukuru hata waliweza kuchukua picha ya sataka, wakahesabu wenyewe, wakaona sataka ni shilingi 250.
Judge Orlando has further ordered police not to interfere with the activities of the self-proclaimed Jesus in Tongaren.
Ruth Wamboi reporting for Prime Edition from Milimani Locals in the County of New York.
Let's now revisit that story that I read earlier. President William Ruto nominating the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nudin Haji, as the new Director General of the National Intelligence Service. Haji will replace retired Major General Philip Wachira Kameru, who is proceeding on retirement. The President also reshuffling 7 principal secretaries and nominating 1 more. Here now is the full report.
Nudin Haji returns to the National Intelligence Service after a 6-year service as Director of Public Prosecutions. Before being the DPP, Haji was the Deputy Director of the Counter Organized Crime Unit within the National Intelligence Service. He holds a Bachelor of Laws and Master's degree from the University of Wales, Cardiff. He also has a second Master's degree in National Security Policy with merit from the Australian National University. He will replace retired Major General Philip Wachira Kameru, who is proceeding on retirement. The President also reshuffled 7 principal secretaries. Esther Ngero, the PS for Performance Management in the Office of the Prime Cabinet, has been reassigned to Correctional Services in the Ministry of Interior and National Administration. She'll be replaced by Faith Njeri Harrison. Engineer Peter Kiplagat moves from Medical Services in the Ministry of Health to Sports in the Ministry of Youth Affairs, Arts and Sports. Jonathan Moeke moves from Sports to the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development in charge of livestock. Ephantas Kimani shifts from Forestry in the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry to
to irrigation in the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. Hari Kimtai moves from livestock in the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development to medical services in the Ministry of Health. The PS for Irrigation, Gitonga Mugambi, moves to the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry to take charge of forestry affairs. Correctional Services PS Mary Mudhoni has been nominated to the Ministry of Health as PS for Public Health and Professional Standards. Opicho Chemtai for Prime Edition.
Kenya National Union Teachers is now threatening to sue the state. We'll tell you why when we come back after this short break. Stay with us.
What am I forgetting? Nini, workers paid, rent checked, mlango locked, visiting notice, goza mzae silitoa jana la internet sorted. What is it? What am I forgetting?
Nini, nimesahau kucheza Loto Moto.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Unaweza shinda hadi milioni 2 kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number, weka 757070. Account number, weka neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2,000.
So baby, I'm telling you, I'm sorry, but I'm leaving you. You never should have made me cry. I'm sorry, but I'm leaving you. I checked it in rehab, and baby, your body's easy. Your body's easy, yeah. It's like I checked it in rehab. Can somebody help me, please?
Kwa majina naitwa Irene Dunge, ama business lady. Nafanyanga biashara hapa Adams. Loto Moto is real. Msiogope kucheza, muendelee kucheza, mtawin. Kuna a lot of stuffs zenye unaweza win. Kuna cash, so it's a good experience. Nimejishindia 8,000, nashukuru sana.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number, weka 757070. Account number, andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2,000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
Welcome back. Our socials at KBC Channel 1, my Twitter handle at Mboya24. Now, moving on, the bipartisan committee tasked with addressing issues affecting Kenyans has finally agreed on a framework on the nature of deliberations, ending weeks of push and pull on whether the talks should adopt a parliamentary, extra-parliamentary or executive order approach. On Monday night, after hours of deliberations, the committee unanimously agreed to have the talk anchored on parliamentary and extra-parliamentary framework, signaling, by the way, the beginning of the bipartisan talks on issues raised by Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja. Here's that report.
After days of deliberations on the framework the bipartisan talks should take, the Joint Committee on Monday night finally settled on parliamentary and non-parliamentary frameworks as the basis on which the talks should be held, ending weeks of deliberations on what framework to pick. Azimio la Umoja coalition now wants the committee to prioritize issues affecting Kenyans.
We've received a progress report from our team, and they are saying that they have made some progress. They're going to continue next week. There are issues which are very critical, which we give a deadline of 30 days. That those within 30 days, we must have a solution. This includes the cost of living, the cost of essential commodities like unga, oil, cooking oil, the price of electricity, school fees, and so on.
In the next 30 days, Odinga also wants the committee to address electoral issues as well as political party discipline.
Then the other one is a guarantee and assurance that there will be no interference with all Azimio-affiliated political parties. And we've said that, for example, they must not continue to interfere with the Jubilee political party. They must give us an undertaking that they will not interfere. For example, the Jubilee's General Assembly or Convention is scheduled to take place on Monday next week.
The committee, which took a break to brief their respective coalition leaderships on the progress, will on Wednesday resume engagements. For Prime Edition, I'm Gladys Mungai.
Public servants are set to receive a salary increment starting on the 1st of July. This is after the Treasury allocated over 17 billion shillings in the 2023-2024 budget following recommendations by the Salaries Remuneration Commission. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Education has decried insufficient budgetary allocation that has failed to factor in the funding of almost 1 million learners that will join junior secondary schools. That's in January.
While appearing before the National Assembly Finance and Planning Committee, Treasury Principal Secretary Chris Kiptoo said 17.7 billion shillings had been allocated in the 2023-2024 budget for the implementation of recommendations of job evaluation by Salaries and Remuneration Commission that will increase salaries of public servants.
For public servants salary increment provision, we have 17.7 billion. And this has been provided for the implementation of the SRC job evaluation.
Treasury is currently engaging the Salaries and Remuneration Commission on how to actualize the Commission's salary review report. The Treasury has also indicated plans to stop funding Kenya Airways by reducing government investment from 20.6 billion shillings to 1.6 billion shillings as a strategy to reduce government expenditure.
The situation is not bad, and I want Kenyans not to panic because of that rating. Our economy is resilient, and the challenges we are facing now are not unique to Kenya.
Meanwhile, the Education Ministry is warning the proposed budgetary allocation for day secondary schools and junior secondary schools is inadequate. Basic Education Principal Secretary Belio Kipsang told the Education Committee that funding of at least 1 million learners who will join junior secondary schools in January had not been factored in the 2023-2024 budget.
I think we have the issue of junior secondary, which is very critical. I want you to really interrogate these issues before us and look into them so that actually we have value for money.
Gisho Kiwashira, Prime Edition.
Now, his childhood dream of becoming an engineer was shattered when he dropped out of school at class 8 to allow her parents afford to educate his sisters. Today, Shawal Baraza from Kakamega County is a water vendor in Kajiado's Ongata Rongai. Our reporter Pauline Kihali caught up with Baraza in his hustle and filed this report on the day that the world is celebrating the boy child.
It is shortly before 3 p.m. in Ongata Rongai town, Kajiado County. 33-year-old Shawal Baraza and Afya, his donkey, are as usual inseparable.
Wenye menisoea mimi, hadi hata nikipea mtu mwenye nafanyana naye, mwenye tunasaidiana naye, inamujua lakini haiwezi enda, ni vile ina mudharau, yani hata afanya ijapa mafanye ni haiwezi enda mahali popote.
And this is how the duo's life has been for close to 3 years now. For Baraza, it has been a long journey, literally speaking.
Nimechukua karibu miaka 3 na nilianza nikiwa kama mtu wa mkono na yule niliyekuwa nafanya na yeye kazi akanipea ushauri ya kutafuta yangu.
This is not Baraza's part-time engagement. It is the real deal, the real hustle. It has sustained him and his wife and 3 children.
Wakati wa jua ama kama hakuna maji ya kanjo, saa zingine si ndio tunaokoleanga watu huku na hizi punda zetu. Hop. Na tunapofanya hivyo ndio at least tunapata ka pesa, unaweza save kidogo, hata kama ni nyumba unalipa, chakula unakula, hata wazazi unaweza watumia kwa hizo. Lakini wakati wa mvua hatuwezi
Mapato yako chini. Iko chini. From childhood, Baraza's dream was to become an engineer, a dream now clearly gone with the wind. His school life did not go beyond class 8 as his parents could not afford to sustain all their children in school. So he dropped out for the sake of his sister's progression.
Ni ile tu mambo na school fees haikuwa na mimi nikasema wacha mimi mwenyewe nisimamia au wengine niende nitafute ili hawa niwaendeleze, sababu tungesoma wote tungekuwa na school fees na haikuwa.
And according to Baraza, his sisters did not disappoint.
Kila mtu alitoka wakati walifanya form 4, kila mtu akaenda kutafuta maisha yake pia. Lakini walikuwa na matarajio kuendeleza masomo na wangefaulu kutokezea hapo waendelee na masomo sababu pesa sasa ingekuwa mingi.
This perhaps is just a glimpse into the sacrifices of the boy child in favor of the girl child. According to Baraza, the plight of the boy child is way down in the list of societal priorities.
Mtoto wa kike huanga anatetewa sana upande wao kama kitu imewafanyikia. Lakini sisi vijana upande wetu hatuna mtetezi wetu. Saa hapo mahali ndio sielewangi shida inakuanga wapi upande wa msichana, na sisi vijana hatuna mtu wa kutusaidia, lakini upande wa wasichana kama imefanyikia sisi huanga tunalemewa sisi vijana.
In a good day, Baraza, with the help of Afya, can fetch up to 1,500 Kenyan shillings. But how is it like doing this business?
Ukiwa kwa barabara wanga wanasema watu wa punda wana insurance, wale watu wa magari ni ile tu akikuja anapita style nyandaka, wengine wale wa malori wanakukonga, unaanguka kwa mtaro na punda yako na wanatoroka wanaenda. Sasa utakilei na sababu umeanguka utawafuata.
But this is not enough to disrupt his vision.
Na kuna wale wanakuja sababu fulani amekuja, uweze jua nini imekuleta, lakini ukijua shida imekuleta Nairobi, ukikaa ukijipanga kwa hiyo shida hata huenda inaweza isha kwenu ama kwako.
Today, the boy child has been arguably neglected in the society. But as the story of Baraza and his donkey clearly indicates that, the boy child is resiliently soldiering on. Remember that children are the future. Today's boys are tomorrow's dads. Let us all join hands to protect the interests of the African boy child and preserve our African culture. Happy World Boy Child Day to all the boys in the world. As the sun goes down, it symbolizes the end of yet another day of aching a living for Baraza. From Ongata Rongai Town, Kajiado County, I am Pauline Kihali.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina naitwa Francis Otieno. Nimetoka pale Kayole, Matopeni hapo Spring Valley. Nimekuwa nikicheza loto na kama jinsi ambavyo mumeona siku ya leo nimekuwa mmoja wa washindi. Ninaweza penda kuwahimiza Loto Moto ni ukweli, jaribu hata wewe. Inaweza kuwa siku yako imefika kama vile yangu imefika.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2,000. Lipa kisha subiri draw. So baby
Welcome back. Nairobi branch of the Kenya National Union of Teachers, NAT, has threatened to sue the state over the government's proposed 3% housing levy on salaries. Led by Nairobi branch NAT Executive Secretary Mboya Macharia, the teachers said that the house levy deduction can only happen when there are proper consultations, salary increment, and also questioning who will manage the proposed housing levy funds.
Solidarity forever! The Kenya National Union of Teachers Nairobi branch on Tuesday added its voice to those opposing the proposed 3% levy on salaries to fund affordable housing scheme.
There must be light. And for us as teachers, and specifically the teachers of this city, the light has to be very clear. No salary increment, no 3%.
Led by Nairobi branch NAT Executive Secretary Mboya Macharia, they termed the move untenable in view of the tough economic times.
What we are saying is for the government to deduct this 3% from our salary. The government should increase our salary.
Yes. We are overburdened, especially the women. We are saying no. We are not going to accept, or else we go to the streets.
The union accused the government of turning a deaf ear to those opposing the levy and threatened to sue it if it doesn't shelve the proposal.
Failure by the government to listen to the plight of the teachers. Teachers, we are ready to down our tools, and also we are ready to take legal action immediately.
The union said the house levy deduction can only happen after proper consultation and a salary increment. The union further questioned who will manage the housing levy funds. They argued that the levy should be made voluntary.
We are always hearing about 3% affordable houses levy, but the government has not come clearly. Which is that body which is going to head, which is going to manage this money? No salary increment, no 3% deduction.
A very good evening to you. Thank you for keeping it Prime Edition time to get the latest in the world of business. My name is Betty Kiptum. Now, if a bill being proposed by the State Department for Livestock is enacted into law, livestock farmers will be required to engage professionals for breeding of their animals. Livestock Principal Secretary Harry Kimtai says the bill aims to regulate training, registration and licensing of animal production professionals.
The livestock value chain has been infiltrated by unqualified service providers who operate freely due to limited regulatory policies and in-service provisions, contributing to a lack of animal welfare standards. It is for this reason that the State Department for Livestock is undertaking a public participation session for the proposed Animal Production Professionals and Technicians Bill 2023. The draft bill provides a legal framework for the training, regulation and licensing of livestock production professionals and technicians.
Major issues have had is the issues of the feeding the animals, and we have a lot of adulteration of livestock feeds.
So this bill, once enacted, will fix some of those issues, and the professionals will do a professional job, and they'll be able to advise the pastoralists or the livestock producing counties on how they are going to go on with the business.
The State Department for Livestock is keen to intensify regulation of the livestock value chain by, among others, compelling farmers to only seek services from accredited professionals.
Fix issues of animal breeding, which will be done professionally. We remember very well that the quality of our feeds is very low. This is an area that the professionals, this act is going to cover.
There is a lot of transformation going on, and therefore there's need for the actors to be well regulated so that we can realize a sector which is more competitive, a sector which is more resilient, and a sector that is more productive.
Public participation forums have already been conducted in Nyanza and the Rift Valley, with the State Department expected to wrap up the exercise next month. Trevor Ngendo for Prime Edition.
Of course, Harry Kimtai spoke when he was the Livestock Principal Secretary. He has since been reassigned to medical services under the Ministry of Health. Now moving on, Equity Group made 12.8 billion shillings in net profit during the first 3 months of this year. The profit represents 6.6% growth that has been attributed to a 57% increase in non-funded income going digital and venturing into the Democratic Republic of Congo. Equity Group CEO James Mwangi says this is despite the current rates of inflation, the costs from the Spire Bank acquisition, and a 33% increase in staff costs.
Equity Group reported a year-on-year net income growth of 28% from the first quarter of 2022. The lender based this on a successful entry into the Democratic Republic of Congo's financial markets, making up for 26% of its loan book. Non-funded income rose from 11.5 billion shillings to 18 billion shillings, pushing up total income to 39.7 billion shillings.
Non-funded income is a higher quality income because it's not dependent on the balance sheet size and it's not subject to cyclic shocks, and it's realized income. So we've been able to achieve 57% non-funded income growth rate against a 21% growth in interest income, and hopefully that is the momentum that we intend to maintain.
Mwangi says a majority of the lender's transactions are now done outside banking halls, with 82% of transactions being cashless and 87% of all loans being processed on mobile channels.
The momentum is building. And it's building when the numbers are already, percentages are high. So what it means is that we are headed towards 50, almost 100%. And whether that has to do with the culture or it has to do with the demography, it defines the changing demography.
Total costs increased 46% to 22.8 billion shillings on account of a 127% growth in loan loss provisions to 3.1 billion shillings and a 33% increase in staff costs after an increase in employees.
There's been a shock reducing, and we have seen our NPLs have grown by about 15 billion. That is the effect of the shock that we are going through. Specific sectors, we can count the loans that are in those sectors. But the good thing is the coverage. The NPL coverage is at 88%, and when you add the credit guarantees, it is still above 100 at 115%.
Hibak Said for Prime Edition.
And savings and credit cooperative organizations should intensify sensitization of the unbanked to join the cooperative movement to stimulate savings. Police SACCO Chairman David Mategwa says increasing memberships will ensure SACCOs have enough resources to invest in, among others, housing schemes that will ensure members access affordable housing. This as the Police SACCO is targeting to increase its asset base to 54 billion shillings in this financial year through increased membership.
With almost 53 billion or more. And also the revenue, we are looking at making a revenue of 8.2 billion if everything goes well as planned in our strategic plan. If you are still in the system, make sure that you save for the sunset, because that is the time you require money. When you leave employment, that is the time you need the money. When you age, that is the time, because you can't move. There are a lot of ailments coming in your space. You need to go to hospital. Without the money, then you can't live long.
And a low sensitization on data protection regulations and underreporting of data breaches is partially to blame for low compliance with the new data protection law. Data Commissioner Immaculate Kasait says the Office of the Data Protection Commission is recruiting personnel as well as training officers to enhance compliance levels.
Even though the law makes it mandatory for all those who handle data to register with the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, registration is still low.
Is because this issue of data protection is relatively very new. Some people don't understand what it means to have data defaulted by design. What does that mean? Putting in place safeguards. And many times when you ask people what safeguards do you have, they will tell you we have firewalls. But firewalls are not safeguards.
Failure to report cases of data breach is further curtailing enforcement of data protection.
The law specifies, or the regulation specifies for certain things. So for example, you keep a retention schedule. You have issues with respect to incident management, specifically when it comes to data breaches, because you need to report it within 72 hours, so you need to be conscious about how you're doing so and how it cascades up the chain.
The Office of the Data Protection Commission last year received 1,700 complaints, of which 800 are at different stages of resolution.
When the public does not know, that is one. Two, companies are not taking precaution because the biggest threat is human. And three, that we are not enforcing for those ones who are not actually adhering to this.
Kasait is urging data handlers to adopt best practice and report data breaches whenever they occur. Regina Manyara reporting for Prime Edition.
10 out of existing 14 microfinance banks made losses last year due to stiff competition, mainly from digital lenders as well as commercial banks. This is according to the latest bank supervision report by the central bank, which indicates that net advances by microfinance banks reduced year-on-year to 39.3 billion shillings from 40.1 billion shillings in 2021.
The latest bank supervision report by the central bank indicates that microfinance sector registered a 4.8% decline in total assets in the year 2022. The total asset as at 31st December 2022 stood at 70.4 billion shillings in comparison to 73.9 billion shillings reported in the year ended 2021. As a result, Microfinance Bank closed 4 marketing offices, bringing down the total marketing offices from 63 in 2021 to 59 in 2022. Microfinance Bank's customer deposits declined by 8% to 46 billion shillings in 2022. The decline in deposits was due to transfer of funds to alternative attractive investments due to overall increase in interest rates. Microfinance lenders' loan book further declined by 2% to 39.3 billion shillings in 2022. The overall banking sector registered an increase in profitability in 2022, with a profit before tax increasing by 22% from 197 billion shillings in December 2021 to 240.4 billion shillings in December 2022. The increase in profitability was attributed to a higher increase in total income that stood at 114.7 billion shillings compared to the increase in total expenses that was valued at 71.3 billion shillings. During the period under review, banking industry customers' deposit grew by 12.3% to 4.9 trillion shillings from 4.5 trillion shillings in 2021. Non-performing loans increased by 9.4% to 503.2 billion shillings in December 2022.
And that's all the business we had for you this evening. Daniel Wahome is standing by to give you the latest in sports. My name is Betty Kiptum. Do have yourself a good night. Bye-bye.
Nafasi yako ya kuwa mdosi wako. Jiunge na washindi tufanye biashara. Kuwa mshindi. Mozart Bet.
after the dust settled on rigorous campaigns, Kenyans are waiting for elected leaders to deliver on their pledges.
Have you used the hustler fund?
When your children sleep hungry, when you can borrow 500 or 1,000 shillings and they have some food on the table.
So the 500 you're giving me now is my purchasing power has literally been diminished comparing to probably even January or December.
But how have the leaders performed so far?
In terms of the amount of money that is being disbursed, the minimum being 500 shillings, how do you scorecard that?
No, that I'll give it a 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5.
1 out of 5.
I'll still give it 5 out of 5.
Every week, we bring you an honest assessment of the national and county governments.
What is the impact of the Hustlers Fund?
There are people who borrow praying they don't have to pay back. For example, they pray that the owner dies.
The Scorecard. Every Tuesday at 10 p.m. on KBC Channel 1.
Sports News is brought to you by Mozart Bet.
Kurumisha ndege. Aviator instant game. Be a daring pilot and earn by how much high you can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit. Mozart Bet.
A very good evening to you. My name is Daniel Wahome and welcome to Prime Edition Sport. The national women's rugby team head coach Dennis Wanja has named his final squad ahead of the Rugby Africa Women's Cup slated for the 18th to the 29th of May in Antananarivo, Madagascar. The tactician named 28 players for the continental assignment.
The former Kenyan international named 28 players ahead of the Rugby African Women's Cup in Madagascar.
Our preparation and the support we got enabled us to be able to pick a side that has consistency and now is starting to gel. We're looking at a future which is a realistic one where we'll have many games to play when we qualify to the next level because we have that belief in us, we have that confidence, and the work that we have put is a deposit which we have.
The team has been training at Kasarani Annex and will leave the country on 28th of this month for the championship. The Lioness will be spearheaded by skipper Sheila Chajira, assisted by Judith Auma.
The team will be captained by Sheila Chajira and she'll be deputized by Judith Okumo.
Helen Anyango, Lawin Mwavezi and Valentine Atieno will make their first debut in the Lioness team, while Peruz Musyoka and Christabel Linda will miss the continental showpiece due to injuries. Lioness will start their campaign against host Madagascar on 28th May before meeting Women Books and Cameroon on 24th and 28th respectively.
I am happy to be here to speak to our Lionesses just before they depart for Madagascar, to wish them good travels, good tidings. I hope that they come back as qualifiers for the Women's World Cup.
Reporting for Prime Edition, I'm Sila Onyango.
And moving on is that the Kenya Ports Authority men's volleyball team registered their second win at the ongoing 2023 Africa Men's Volleyball Club Championship after seeing off ISEG Sport of Senegal by 3-1 in Tunisia. The Sami Mulinga-led Chargers bagged the first and second sets 25-19 and 25-21 respectively. ISEG Sport won the third set 25-20 before losing the fourth set 25-20. In other matches, Zamalek of Egypt humbled Association Sportive du Marsa of Tunisia by 3-2. While Port Douala of Cameroon saw off Green Buffaloes of Zambia by 3-1. KPA are Kenya's lone representatives at the Continental Showpiece. KPA finished 5th overall in the last edition of the Africa Men's Volleyball Club Championship last year in Kelibia, Tunisia. And AC Milan coach Stefano Pioli believes his side can reach the Champions League final despite trailing perennial nemesis Inter Milan by 2-0 after the first semi-final first leg. The two teams play the second leg tonight at the San Siro.
That can be such a danger here, trying to get free.
AC Milan trail Archivos Inter Milan 2-0 after the semi-finals first leg.